Welcome to Bridging Chicago, a podcast that aims to connect our listeners to Chicago's business, community, cultural, and charity leaders.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Bridging Chicago podcast. I'm Nathan, your host for today's episode, and I am so excited to be bringing you another episode in season 7 of the podcast. You can go to www.bridgingchicago.com to listen to our previous 6 seasons of the podcast, as well as our LinkedIn where we put everything up. And you can check out this episodes that we have so far. There have been so many great leaders who are really inspiring people this year. So we encourage you to listen to their stories as well. I always love to have pairs here on the podcast because I think it's so cool to hear the story from 2 different perspectives who are kind of working towards the same goal, who have different backgrounds. And so I'm really excited today to welcome in Ron and Sue Rescigno and hear your story. So first, thank you for joining me and welcome to the podcast.
Our pleasure.
Thank you. We're happy to be here.
Yeah, and it's really kind of a unique episode for us because we know that you are with Rescigno's fundraising professionals, which is a little different perspective than we've had a lot of entrepreneurs. We've had a lot of people who work at nonprofits and who are obviously think about fundraising and are concerned with fundraising. I'm on a couple of nonprofit boards, so fundraising is just something that's always at the top of my mind. But you kind of come in from a different perspective as to what's important and why people give and what they connect with. And I'm really excited to hear more about that. But we are Bridging Chicago, and we always love to start with people's Chicago stories. So I'll let you take it away. Just share with us your Chicago story and the story of how you're together as well.
That's a great idea. And actually, our story is very much a Chicago story in the sense that I grew up on the north side of Chicago, in Old Town, and Sue grew up on
I was actually born in Roseland.
Yeah.
So we lived in Roseland, and then we moved out into the suburbs. So it's a north side, south side story.
Fortunately, as I am, Sue is a Cub fan, so we don't have arguments in that regard. But Sue and I met while I was working at Josephinum High School in Chicago. I was an English teacher there. And Sue came on as the director of development at the school at a time when it was in danger of closing. The school is now 30 some years later. The school still is operating because of the structure, the foundation that she put in there back. I guess that would have been like
1985.
85.
Yeah.
So a long time ago. We're very proud of the fact that they're still there.
Right.
Yeah. Well, to have anything sustain that long, I feel like now is pretty rare with technology innovations and different generations of people coming in. You know, I feel like now we have Gen Z workers coming in and a lot is changing. Some obviously for the better. You know, others are going to be very opinionated about other changes, but to have something kind of sustain that long is really impressive. Sue, how do you feel when you when you look back on that, about what you did in that time, to see that it's still having an impact today? How's that make you feel?
I'm so proud of that. That's why we do what we do. Like we work with nonprofits nationwide, actually, and our base, of course, is in Chicago. But what we do is we help them create programs, sustainable programs that will live long after they go, because fundraising professionals, a lot of them I think the average length is that they stay at organizations for like less than 2 years. So if we can create the programs and you know that live on for years, that's how the organizations are gonna continue. And the organizations offer such wonderful things and services. Our nonprofits today, what they provide people, it's wonderful to be part of that. So,
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I actually wrote the book of Fatal Fundraising Flaws, is because you would think that nonprofit organizations have established programs, fundraising plans to raise more money. But in actuality, many of them don't have a formal plan that they follow. And if they have a plan, it may be in their head, but it's not in writing. We come in and we help them create plans that, as Sue said, will sustain them for years to come if they follow the plan.
Yeah. How do you feel though when you create something, it sustains, but you see change with that thing over the years, or you see other people come in and put their spin on it, or you see um, people have opinions about how those things should be executed after you've worked really hard on it? How do you sort of view change in something that you've cared for so much, that you've designed, developed, and implemented, and then it changes over those number of years?
You're absolutely right. We feel terrible about it, and we've seen it happen.
Sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's good,
Yeah.
right? If they're going to come in and they're going to make it better. But there
Yeah.
are certain fundamentals that need to be followed.
Mm.
So if they continue with the fundamentals and then they add to it, then that can improve on it, and things change.
Yeah.
And like, for example, you create a plan and you're adding things like for social media and digital and things like that, and that's like so important that you need to do that. Or you create a basic plan and then they're doing so well, you have, like, say a basic plan would include an annual fund, which is money that's raised annually throughout the organization, normally done through direct mail, social media, special events. But then as your program grows, you need to add major gift campaigns and capital campaigns and your acknowledgement program and stewardship. So if you mean that they're going to add to it in that way, that's great. But
Yeah.
it can be very frustrating when new leadership comes in
and they want to put their stamp on
Yeah.
the program
Yeah.
that's already working and working well.
Right.
But for whatever reason, they want to do it take it in a different direction. That can be very frustrating.
When it feels like everyone wants to have a legacy, right? Everyone wants to be remembered for something, and something positive in their view, in their industry, whatever that may be. And so I feel like there are times when people come in and feel like, in order to leave my legacy, I have to do something big. I have to do some splash thing, or I have to really change something that people are going to be like, wow, that's so different, that's so new, that's so innovative, whatever. Sometimes I feel like it is important to keep the ship afloat and to keep it moving in a direction. And there are going to be seasons of change and seasons of just sort of keeping the ship afloat. And, I've been in situations where major changes happen and it has not gone well on multiple fronts, because maybe it wasn't 100% necessary at that point. Can you kind of speak into that, and about how, sort of to come into a situation where there's something existing, or they are using some system to do something, and you want to kind of make your mark or leave your legacy? How do you come into that? What's the mindset maybe of a leader who comes into a situation like that?
Okay. So my feeling is that as a leader, the most important thing to do is assess the current program instead of making
Mm.
changes, because obviously the organization that you've been with has done some really good things. And I think you need to assess, just like as a leader, you need to assess your employees. You need to assess what's happening, right? So you do that. And I think that your opportunity to put your stamp on thing comes after 6 months or so, when you see what's already happening and you see this is really good, and you build and
Yeah.
grow on those things. And sometimes that means editing things in terms of like deleting things, programs. But I really think a good leader takes at least 6 months to assess.
Yeah.
At the
It's a
at the
great thought.
same time, though, there certainly have been occasions where we've had a new person come into a nonprofit that we've been working with for a while and have a plan that's working, and they decide that they're going to cut the budget in fundraising, for example, and spend more in marketing rather than in
Yeah.
fundraising, and just talk about the accomplishments of the organization and how great they are, rather than telling stories that motivate people to want to make gifts to those organizations. They don't. eh, They don't put the emphasis on asking. They put the emphasis on more bragging about their accomplishments. And that's when programs start to lag.
Yeah. I'm sensing a bit of this, like I love this relationship that you have together as far as what you're adding to the conversation and what you must add to the organization. How does that work when you're working with your clients? Do you have this sort of I don't want to say good cop, bad cop, but like this bounce between the two of you is really interesting. I really love that. And do you bring that to the organization as well?
So that's so funny that you say that, Nathan, because we get told that a lot. That so like, especially when we speak, that like when we have presentations and stuff, that they like it because we bring different viewpoints. Although
Yeah.
we agree on, a lot, we also have some different viewpoints on things. So our clients actually
Hmm.
like that. Ron's we've been in business for over 33 years, and it was my brainchild because I was in fundraising and development. And when Ron came in, his expertise is the messaging, the copywriting. Of course, he's written 2 books, like all of that. Ron has done, and the sales. So, and
Yeah.
expertise is more in the operations of the business, and
Okay.
and also my background in fundraising. So sometimes I
Yeah.
come at it from a sense of I've been there, I've done that, and I get it. Like I've sat at the table, where Ron's comes, like sometimes with the copywriting and stuff, we kind of laugh because he's all into segmentation and writing to specific groups. Like if you're doing a like if you're doing an appeal letter and you have to segment the letter, and you're speaking to donors, and you're speaking to parents, and you're speaking to grandparents or board members,
Mm.
Ron wants the language to be specific for those, but he doesn't always understand how that works with the data, like how your data has
Yeah.
to have all of that in there.
Yeah.
So I'm always fighting for the client when it comes to that. That was a long-winded answer, I'm sorry.
No, it's great. It's great. I was kind of sensing this. It's great though because that's what you want. You want different perspectives, but I think you mentioned it before, kind of starting with the same fundamental starting point. We kind of we I think I at least assume that you both have the same starting point, the same heart, the same values, or many of those same things. And so I think that it makes me come from a place of like, oh, it builds trust to know that you both care about what you're doing and about the organizations that you're working with, and you want what's best for them. And so, if I believe those two things, I think that hearing the different perspectives, it's like both of them are good, both of them are important, and they're both are going to give you some value to what you're trying to do.
And there's no cookie cutter answer um,
Hmm.
really, or explanation. Every client we have comes with their own specific challenges, and they need to be handled individually, and some clients um, need different things that maybe Sue has to offer that I don't, and some need talent or the
Yeah.
skill that I have in certain areas. So uh, that's why we
Yeah.
make a good team.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Um, Money is not a topic that's super comfortable for a lot of people. It can be really tough to talk about money, especially in the arena of fundraising where you're constantly asking people for money, for one thing or another. How do you get people comfortable talking about money and about the financial situations of their organizations or their donors, um, kind of from the start? How do you build that trust and that willingness to kind of go there when, I mean, obviously, if they've come to you, they have some concern about it or some desire to improve or change the way that they do that. But how do you kind of have those initial conversations about money?
Well, one of the things is that we say to organizations that don't like to ask their constituents too often or for too much. One of the things we say is your nonprofit doing good in the world? It does it exist? Is its mission one
Mm,
to do good in the world? Are you proud of its mission? And if so, you need to be not only getting it out there and talking to people about what you do, but giving them the opportunity through the stories that you tell them, giving them the opportunity to help you do more good. And that's what donors look for, and potential donors.
yeah,
They don't necessarily care about what you need as an organization as much as they do what is my opportunity through this organization. If I give them a gift, how will that help the individual who is the end user of the gift? For example,
yeah,
if it's a homeless organization, how will my gift help somebody have a meal tomorrow night, or
mm,
to have a warm winter coat that if I don't make my that gift, that individual won't have. That telling those stories and being bold in asking, because there are people out there who will give if you present them with the right opportunities.
yeah.
Right.
I love that question. Is your nonprofit doing good in the world? Because I think if you believe that it is, then there isn't an amount of money that's too much.
Exactly.
Right.
Um,
And
yeah,
donors will say that the number one reason why donors give is because they were asked. So
yeah,
you have to
yeah.
ask. Yeah.
I remember my guidance counselor telling me like that the amount of scholarship money that goes unclaimed every year, and it's wild to know how much money organizations or trusts have that just doesn't get used because no one applied.
It's
No one asked for the
amazing.
Yeah,
money.
It's
that's
amazing.
sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy how much is out
Right.
there that just isn't getting taken advantage of. That they would really love to give to people who need it. So I could definitely see that. Being asked is it's obviously step one, and I think I've seen it a few times where I've asked and people have surprised me, and I've seen a few times where I've asked for people to surprise me for the other reason when they said no or they've given much less than what I thought they probably could or maybe even should. And so I think it's kind of like in sports. It's like if you want to win a championship, you have to be okay with losing, because no one does that right away. And I think in the same vein with fundraising, if you want to get a yes, you have to be okay with getting 10 no's first.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, how do you sort of prepare people for that though? Because getting a no can be really heartbreaking actually when you really believe in the mission, and you really connect with it and you really work hard for it. So how do you prepare people to hear no once, twice, three times or more? before they get those yeses?
Well, I think a lot of it comes in the preparation and the research that you put into. And I think the majority of it is getting to know your prospective donors before you actually do the ask. So you should be having
Yeah,
conversations, and it all that, that here we're talking about major gifts. So we're out of the annual fund process here, but if we're talking
yeah,
about major
yeah,
gifts, you really need to know who you need to do the research. Who are they currently
yeah.
donating to, and what are they giving to them? Why are they
Mm,
involved in your organization? So you're going to them and you're asking them for support. What why are you asking them? How are they currently involved, and why are they involved? You need to know that. You need to be having that conversation with them before you ever go to them with a major gift ask. But knowing what
yeah,
they're giving to other organizations, knowing why they're involved in your organization, listening to what they're interested in donating to, and bringing that opportunity to them. That's what's really
mm,
important when you're doing the major gifts gift. And I think you're right. Everybody has to be prepared for a no, but I think you need to do your homework and do your research before you ever go and make those asks.
And what Sue just said there, I think, is really important. It's one of the leading trends in fundraising in 2024, and that is to get to know your donors as much as possible, because the more you know about them, the more you learn what they're interested in giving to and how much they're capable of giving. But the trend itself being grow your donor relationships. Hold those donors tight to you, because once you lose them, it's very difficult to get them back. And the way you lose donors is by not communicating with them, not creating those long lasting relationships. The stronger the relationship
yeah.
is, the more they're going to stay with you year after year and grow their giving over time.
Yeah, in some ways, kind of like a job interview. You got to be prepared going into it. You got to know the organization and the
Mhm.
people, um, or else they're going to kind of sense that you're just coming in off the street asking for
Right.
money.
Right.
What are some mistakes that you see organizations make when it comes to fundraising? What are some common themes that you see that sort of are more likely to get a no than a yes,
So, Sue,
or even a maybe? Because I always consider a maybe to be a no.
No, you shouldn't.
maybe maybe simply means not right now,
Right.
but maybe
Yeah,
later.
yeah, yeah. That's probably where I need to get better is the maybes, not looking at them as no's, but looking at them as come back
Right.
around, stick around, volunteer once or
Yeah.
something, and
Well,
maybe,
then, and I think the question is, what can I say to make you change your mind to a yes? You know,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's a great point.
So one of the mistakes that nonprofits make, in one of the leading mistakes, is they don't invest in the fundraising program. Either they don't invest in
Yeah,
enough staff, in the technology that's necessary in today's fundraising world, or they don't invest in simply, as I said before, creating relationships with donors. And one of the things we do when we work with new prospective nonprofits is we ask what their budget is, because it's from the budget that we can build a plan that will allow them
mm,
to raise more money than they're currently raising. And that idea of investing in the program is so important. The more you put in, we see it time and time again, the more you will get out. Did you have another one, Sue, in terms of
No, I
mistakes?
was thinking about investments too. I mean, we could talk about simple trends too, and I find this very interesting that direct mail is still the number one source of finding new donors. Um, and you know,
Mm,
10 years ago, we thought direct mail was going to be dead. And but those people who stopped direct mail and went straight to digital are now struggling and coming back. Because the
yeah,
digital email solicitations, they don't work as well. So that's an interesting
right.
trend. And direct mail is also, like, you know, not doing anything, you know, not spending a lot of money on brochures and fancy things like that. Be good stewards of of their money. So that's also a trend, to just basic number 10 envelopes. It doesn't have to be flashy.
Mm,
But another trend, or mistakes I think people make, is they work really hard to get the the gift. So you're, whatever you're doing, you know, whether it's personal solicitation or if it's through direct mail, however you're getting that gift, and they don't spend the same amount of time on acknowledging and thanking the donor. And then what happened, and the whole idea is you have to get the donor. Once you get the gift, I mean, excuse me, you have to get the gift. Once you get the gift, you have to thank them, and then you have to report back the impact, and then ask again. And then
yeah,
sometimes the mistake
yeah,
is people don't want to ask again right away, and they should. They need.
yeah,
So, and that's a new trend, that is something that for years people did not do, but it is definitely something that's been happening for the past few years that is really important. And it's a mistake. They lose donors because sometimes donors will
mm,
just give you a small gift amount to see how you're going to respond to them.
What we know
yeah,
from research is, especially with first time donors, you know, you work hard to get that first gift from a donor. There's a like a 90-day honeymoon period in which you thank them as personally and as creatively as you can, not a form letter, but a personal thank you. And then you report back to them on the impact their gift had. And once you thank and report back to them, for example, with an impact report or through a newsletter, you prime them for the next gift. And there's a 90-day period in which to get that done. And what we see time and again is, if you ask for that second gift within 90 days, you have a better chance of getting that donor to give a second and then a third and a fourth gift than if you wait, for example, a year before you give the next gift, or ask for the
yeah.
next gift, I should say.
That's so good. Don't want to give away too many of your secrets, because then people we want people to check it out. I do want to spend just a couple minutes around talking about the
Yeah.
book, Fatal Fundraising Flaws, because I think that's really interesting. So just tell us about the book and about why people would find it interesting.
Well, what I do is, in the book is, and this is based on the 33 years of business, and then some, that we have been running Rescigno's fundraising professionals. I list some of the most common mistakes that we see that nonprofits make, and I don't just list them. I talk about them, and then I offer solutions to fix those mistakes, and that can help them with their fundraising programs. And I'd lead off with chapter number 1 with what we just talked about, and that is organizations that fail to invest in their program, um,
Yeah,
being the number one thing that we see nonprofits failing to do.
yeah. I just looked it up here on the Amazon app, so all you do is type in Fatal Fundraising Flaws, it'll come right up, so you can easily go and order that. Um, yeah, free delivery by July 26th. So just check that out on Amazon. It's super easy, so that's great.
Yeah, and
Um,
you know, I think, and my hope was, when I wrote the book, that organizations, individuals will learn something from it, even if it's just one nugget that can help them increase one aspect of fundraising. There are certainly more, but anything that will help them on an individual basis. I tried to cover the gamut of a number of different aspects of fundraising.
Yeah. I'll definitely be ordering that because I'm excited to hear more about especially fundraising flaws. So I'm excited for that. Sue, I want to start with you on this question because was your brainchild back in the day, but as you sort of reflect on the past and look to the future, where do you hope that that the company goes? I mean, you've done so much, but where do you hope that Rescigno's fundraising professionals can go from here? And what do you see for the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, we've come so far because, we started just doing the donor communication packages. That's how we started. And now, because clients have asked us, we now help them with all their planning and strategy for their all their communication programs. So, like their
Wow.
solicitations, their stewardship programs, their acknowledgement programs. We work with them on all of those things. We've in the past 3 years have been asked to do more major gift fundraising, capital campaign, feasibility studies, and mentoring. So the company
Mm,
is growing very quickly because all of our customers that we've been working with for years, they're like, oh, this is wonderful. Now you can help us with all of these things. Like one thing just leads to the other. Um, so yeah,
yeah,
so the company's just been growing leaps and bounds, and but it's great. I mean, we love what we do. We play a very
yeah,
small part and helping others do really good things in the world. So, in all the organizations that we're involved in, it just feels, like in Chicago, there's Lyric Opera, Goodman Theater, a Treehouse, Pause. Like there's organizations all over that we work with that it makes you feel good when you have to get up every day for work, and sometimes you're like
yeah,
but when you get into these meetings and you realize all the good things that these organizations are doing, so we want to continue to do that, and we want to touch more lives by helping the nonprofits.
yeah. Well, I really hope that you do. I know as you continue to work towards it, that you definitely will. May seem like a small part to you, but I'm sure it's huge impact for the organizations, which means great impact for the city as
Thank
well, and the surrounding areas. So thank you so much. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. It's been such a fascinating conversation, and I definitely want to look more into the organization, into your organization, and sort of how you help others. Also, we highlight nonprofits at the end of the year every year, as we head towards Giving Tuesday. So maybe we can reconnect, and we'd love to hear more from you at that time, especially as organizations are beefing up during the holiday season. So we'll stay connected for sure. But thank you so much for joining us
Oh,
today.
Thank you. It's
thank
been a
you.
pleasure.
We really enjoyed it. Great
Yeah.
questions.
Yep.
Thank you. Well, and we also obviously want to thank our audience for tuning into this episode of Bridging Chicago. We know that you listen to the podcast pretty regularly, and we're so thankful for that and for sharing with your friends. So we hope that you will connect with us on LinkedIn, where you can search Bridging Chicago. But of course, you can go to www.bridgingchicago.com to find out all the ways to stay connected with us and to get connected with Ron and Sue. Quickly, Ron and Sue, do you have social media or a website that you want to shout out?
Sure. Our website is www.rescignos, RESCIGNOS.com.
Perfect. And you can go there and check it out. But of course, you can go to our website and we'll direct you there as well. Ron, Sue, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you have a wonderful day. And thank you for the work that you're doing to help nonprofits just really get more resources to help others.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
We appreciate the
Yeah.
opportunity.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Bridging Chicago, as produced by the SATC Solutions Center. Nothing contained in this podcast shall constitute financial, investment, legal, and/or professional advice. No professional relationship of any kind is created between you and the podcast host or guest. You are urged to speak with your financial, investment, or legal advisors before making any investment or legal decisions. Furthermore, the opinions expressed in this podcast are not necessarily the opinions of SATC Solutions Center, SATC Law, or any of its employees. This podcast is created by the hosts and guests' individual capacities. All opinions on this podcast are or have been rendered based on specific facts, under certain conditions, and are subject to certain assumptions and may not and should not be used or relied upon for any other purpose, including but not limited to, or use in or in connection with any investment purposes or legal proceeding.